Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. In this opportunity, I would like to explain the result of my study from a video called 2021 KDMI Seminar on YouTube. But before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Balkis Cahya Kausar from the English department, and in the English Debate Society, I chose debate. So I already took some notes from the video, and the first thing I learned from the video is about what debate is. I'm gonna tell the meaning of the debate with my own words. So, in my opinion, debate is where people give argument to each other in order to find the resolve of to solve some issues or motions in the world. And in this debate, we use the British parliamentary system, and in the British parliamentary system, that there will be 4 teams. So I'm gonna explain how the debate will go. The first team that will be giving a speech is the opening government, and then it will be continued by the second team, as known as the opening opposition, then the closing government, and the last one is the closing opposition. So the first speaker of the opening government, as known as the prime minister, will be giving speech first. Then it will be continued by the first speaker of the opening opposition, as known as the leader of opposition. Then it will be continued from the second speaker from the opening government, as known as the party prime minister. Then the second speaker of the opening opposition, as known as the party of leader of the party leader of opposition. And the next one is the first speaker of the closing government, as known as the government member. Then it will be continued by the first speaker from the closing opposition, as known as the opposition member. Then continued by the second speaker of the closing government, as known as government whip. Then the last speaker is the second speaker of the closing government, of the closing opposition, as known as the opposition whip. So in the British parliamentary system, there will be 4 teams, right? But the opening government, the opening opposition, the closing government, and the closing opposition. But both of the opening and the closing team, like opening government with the closing government and the opening opposition with the closing opposition, there will be this in the same team, in the same side, and they will give arguments against the other team, like the government giving the argument against to the opposition. And in this system, POI or interruption is allowed. And the next thing I learned from the video is how do we win the debate. So in order to win the debate, we should arrange our arguments well, and those arguments should respond or answer the argument from the other team. And our arguments should be relevant to the motion. We also need to develop our arguments and explain why the case or the motion is important to be discussed. And we should respond the arguments from the other team well. And maybe many of us wonder about the closing team, like what should they do? So the closing team has the different duty from the opening. The closing team should bring the opening team's forgotten argument, and they should solve the problem that the opening team face. They have to give the solution. They also don't have to be 100% different from the opening, but their argument should be the same like the opening. They also should give the difference or additional argument, and it will be more effective from them. They also should explain the urgency of the debated motion, like what will happen with the word with this argument or solution, and would the word be better off or even worse with this solution or argument. And the closing team shouldn't be forget to respond the other team's argument. It's very important for them. And do not make repetition or the closing team will be useless. And they also better not dismiss the opening's case, especially if the case is good. It's better for them to not make the new debate word. And for the speakers, what should they do as the speaker? As the prime minister or the first speaker of the opening government, the first thing is they have to make a setup how the debate would be, and they have to give the motion background, the stance, and the mechanism of the motion, and the goals. What are you chasing? The goal of the motion, what will make the word better, and of course the argument. And the next speaker, the first speaker of the opening opposition, as known as the leader of opposition. First, they need to give stance, like we don't want to this word to be, or the goal of the opposition team, and of course they have to give the response to the opening's first speaker's argument. They also should give the alternative of solution from the opening's one, and of course they should give some arguments about the motion. And next, the second speaker of both of the opening team, as known as the party prime minister and the party leader of opposition, they can bring the same argument as the first speaker. They also should develop the case of the first speaker. This is important to do, and they have to respond the arguments of the other team well. They shouldn't ignore the previous speaker's argument, and they should explain why the case is important to be discussed. The first speaker of the closing team or of the government member, as known as the government member, first they should compare their case or argument with the opening team, like the differences, and then they should explain their argument significantly, like why is it important to be discussed, and they should give response from the previous argument. Then the second speaker of the closing team, as known as the whips. First, they should give response from the previous arguments, but it has to be more strategic when choosing the other team's argument. But do not force the response. Do not force the response to all arguments. They have to manage the time well and explain their response well. So time management is very important for this speaker. They also should sum up the debate, explain the main problem of the motion, and explain the argument that answer the motion. They should prove their answers from the argument, and they also should explain why their argument is better and more efficient and significant from all other teams. And the next thing I learned from the video is about the debate setup. So, what is proposal debate? Proposal debate is an issue that needs some solutions. The debater should prove that their solutions they brought is the better than the other solution. And what is the evaluate debate? And the evaluating debate is whether an argument giving a solution or make the word better or worse. And about the motion, what's the important part? What is the important thing from the motion that we have to know? So first we have to decide whether it's a propositional or evaluation debate, like I have explained before, and we shouldn't and our argument shouldn't be irrelevant from the motion. And when we're giving definition, we should make the keyword from the motion into words that is easier for the educator to understand, and we also have to give some examples from the phenomenon. Make sure that everyone understands what we're going to discuss about. And about the stance is what do we want to prove, our identity, like our team would be blah 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 or other. And how to get into the debate as the opposition team, like how to we start the speech. We can say that the problem of the motion doesn't exist, or we can say that Questats can do that, or we can say that the government team would make a disaster, or the opposition team, the opposition solution can do better. And about the argument, we shouldn't repeat argument, but we should compare or prove them instead. Prove that our argument or our team is right. And the response from the argument is we have to prove that the other team's analyzing is wrong. And how do we say that our argument is better and more important? We can compare it from others' arguments, which ones is more important and which ones need to be heard. And here are some tips for the opposition team. The opposition teams should make better and larger or wider analysis than the opening team, with taking more examples, different examples from other perspectives around the world. And the closing team should evaluate the opening team and take some ideas that the opening team has forgotten. And the opposition team can also fix the arguments from the opening team. And about the response for the opposition team shouldn't make a new statement. Instead, they should prove that the other team's statement is wrong. And they can also say that the problem or the things that will happen in the opposition team can also happen in the opening team. Like the problem is everywhere, it can't be solved. Like this problem can also be in your team. And the last tips, the other tips for the opposition team, they can use the format even if, like even if you're right and it can be happen, but the impact will be blah 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 and like that. In here, the solution of the other teams is not more important than ours. And another tips for the opposition team, they can also link the response and arguments with the motion, like these motions or solutions or response proves that blah blah blah. And here is also some tips to link the motion. We can point out the relevance of the motion with our arguments, and we can also fix the analysis of the first speaker, and we can also analysis what arguments that we need to respond, and prove that our arguments give bigger contribution and can answer the motions better and more effective. And what the good argument would be like. So the good argument have the logic explanation, and it has to be relevant to the motion. The good argument can also have the process analysis, and it should give the good response too. So okay, that's all that I have learned from the video. So I think the most important things that I have learned from the video is about the argument, the most important is our argument should be relevant to the motion. Before before we have many argument, many response, the first thing is our argument and response has to be relevant, because if it's irrelevant, it would be useless or not important to answer the motion or the problem that needs to be solved. Alright everyone, that's all I can explain what I learned from the video. Thank you so much for paying attention and have a good day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.